Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The crown was heavy, heavier than the chains that had bound his wrists only hours before, and as the cold gold settled upon his brow, a collective gasp sucked the air out of the grand hall, silencing the whispers of 1,000 treacherous courtiers. Valerius stood frozen, his breath hitching in a throat raw from unshed tears, his eyes wide as he stared up into the predatory, obsidian gaze of the man who had conquered his kingdom, ruined his life, and sworn to the world that Valerius was nothing more than a disposable distraction. But now, Kalin, the wolf king of the northern wastes, the tyrant who had bathed in the blood of Valerius's kin, was kneeling before him. Kalin's rough, scarred hand cupped Valerius's cheek with a reverence that terrified him more than the violence ever had. "Let them look," Kalin growled, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the floorboards and straight into Valerius's bones. "Let them see the only thing in this godforsaken world that I bow to." 3 months earlier, Valerius had not been a queen nor a consort. He had been a spoil of war. The kingdom of Ethelgard had fallen not with a bang, but with a whimper of frost. The northern armies, led by the ruthless Alpha King Kalin, had swept down from the jagged peaks like a relentless blizzard, consuming everything in their path. Valerius, the third prince of Ethelgard, the Spare, as his father had cruelly called him, known more for his scholarship and delicate features than his swordsmanship, had been dragged from the burning library of the royal palace. He remembered the smell of smoke and pine. He remembered the blood on the snow. And mostly, he remembered the first time he saw Kalin. The Alpha King was a giant of a man, clad in black armor forged from the iron of the mountains, a wolf pelt cloak draping broad shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of the sky. His hair was the color of a raven's wing, messy and wild, and a jagged scar ran through his left eyebrow, giving him a permanent expression of dangerous skepticism. When the soldiers threw Valerius at Kalin's feet, the king had looked down with eyes devoid of light. "Is this the best Ethelgard has to offer?" Kalin had sneered, nudging Valerius's chin up with the toe of his boot. "A fragile scholar with hair like spun moonlight? He'll break before the winter solstice." "Kill me then," Valerius had spat, his voice trembling but his spirit defiant. "End it. I will not serve you." Kalin's lips had curled into a smirk that was terrifyingly devoid of humor. "Service implies utility, little prince. You are not useful. You are decorative. You will warm my bed until the frost thaws, and when I grow bored, I will discard you to the wolves." That was the contract. That was the life Valerius had been sentenced to. He was taken to the Obsidian Citadel, a fortress carved directly into the black rock of the northern peaks. It was a place of harsh angles, biting winds, and a court filled with generals and nobles who looked at Valerius with a mixture of lust and contempt. He was the southern whore, the spoil of war, the plaything. For weeks, Valerius waited for the cruelty he had been promised. He waited for the whip, for the degradation. But the nights in the king's chambers were confusing, a psychological torture far worse than physical pain. Kalin was possessive, yes. Dominating, absolutely. He would pin Valerius to the silken sheets, his large hands mapping the expanse of Valerius's pale skin with a hunger that felt like starvation. But he never struck him. He never forced him beyond the point of resistance. It was a battle of wills. Kalin would kiss him with a bruising intensity, trying to draw a response, trying to break the icy wall Valerius had built around his heart. And the worst part? The traitorous warmth that bloomed in Valerius's chest. He hated himself for it. He hated the way his body arched into the Alpha's touch, seeking the heat of the man who had destroyed his home. It was the Omega instinct, his biology betraying his loyalty. Kalin was powerful, smelling of cedar, steel, and rain, and despite the hatred, Valerius felt safe in the circle of those arms. It was a safety built on lies. The turning point, or so Valerius thought, came during the Festival of the Moon. The citadel was filled with visiting dignitaries, rival alphas from the borderlands, and the scheming council of elders who constantly pressured Kalin to marry a powerful noblewoman, not toy with a fallen prince. Valerius had been ordered to attend the banquet. He was dressed in translucent silks that left little to the imagination, shaming him, marking him clearly as property. He sat at the foot of Kaelin's throne, his head bowed, enduring the leering gazes of the court. He needed air. He needed to escape the suffocating scent of roasted meat and heavy wine. Slipping away during a toast, Valerius found refuge on a balcony overlooking the frozen abyss of the valley below. He hadn't been alone for long when he heard voices drifting from the shadowed alcove nearby. "The council is restless, my king," came the oily voice of Lord Varon, Kaelin's uncle and a man whose ambition was as vast as his cruelty. "They say you are too attached to the southern boy. They say he weakens you. A king does not keep a pet from a conquered land." Valerius froze. He knew he should leave, but his feet were rooted to the stone. Attached? Kaelin's voice was a cold, sharp laugh. It sounded nothing like the low rumble he used when they were alone in the dark. "Don't be absurd, Varon. The boy is a novelty. A conquest. Nothing more." Valerius felt the blood drain from his face. "He is soft," Kaelin continued, his voice dripping with disdain. "He is just a plaything to pass the long winter nights. Once I have broken him completely, once I have tired of his shivering and his pathetic defiance, I will toss him aside." "Do you really think I would make a queen of a slave?" The words were like daggers. Asterisk, just a plaything. To pass the winter. Toss him aside. Asterisk. Valerius clamped a hand over his mouth to stifle a sob. He had known this. Kaelin had told him this from day one. So why did it hurt so much? Why did it feel like his heart was being carved out of his chest with a dull spoon? Because he had started to hope. Because in the quiet moments before dawn, when Kaelin would pull him close and bury his face in Valerius's hair, it had felt real. It was all a lie. Valerius fled the balcony, his vision blurred by tears. He didn't see the shadow that detached itself from the wall near the alcove, nor the glint of steel in the moonlight. He ran back to his chambers, stripped off the humiliating silks, and curled into a ball on the fur rug, shivering not from the cold, but from the shattering of his soul. He resolved then and there, Kaelin would not break him. He would not give the Alpha the satisfaction of seeing him cry again. He would turn his heart to ice, just like this accursed kingdom. The next week was a blur of misery. Valerius became a ghost. He performed his duties. He submitted in the bedroom, but he was gone. His eyes were dead. He didn't speak. He didn't react. Kaelin noticed. The king's temper grew shorter. He would grab Valerius by the shoulders, shaking him. "Where are you?" Kaelin would demand, his eyes searching Valerius's blank face. "You're here, but you're not here. Speak to me, damn you." "I am whatever you wish me to be, sire," Valerius would reply, his voice hollow. A plaything has no voice. Kaelin would recoil as if struck, a flash of pain crossing his face before the mask of the tyrant slammed back into place. The climax of the tension arrived with the grand hunt. It was tradition for the king to lead a hunt into the Darkwood, and the court followed. Valerius was forced to accompany them, riding a mare that was far too spirited for his liking, flanked by guards. Lord Varon rode up beside him, his smile twisting his mustache. "Enjoy the fresh air, boy," Varon sneered. "I hear the king is looking for a new diversion. Perhaps when he is done with you, he will pass you to the guards. You have certain talents, I'm sure." Valerius stared straight ahead. "I belong to the king until I am dead, my lord." "That can be arranged," Varon muttered. Chaos erupted minutes later. A horn blew, not the hunting horn, but the signal of an ambush. Assassins, dressed in the colors of a rebel faction, but moving with the precision of palace guards, burst from the tree line. Kaelin roared, drawing his massive greatsword. He was a whirlwind of death, cutting down attackers with brutal efficiency. But they were too many, and they were coordinated. They were trying to separate the king from his guards. Valerius watched from the edge of the fray, his heart hammering. He should run. This was his chance. If Kaelin died, he was free. He saw an archer in the trees, taking aim. Not at Kaelin, but at a supporting beam of the ancient ruins they were fighting beneath. The stone archway was destabilized. It was going to collapse directly onto the king. "Kaelin!" The name tore from Valerius's throat before he could stop it. He kicked his mare into a gallop. He didn't have a weapon. He didn't have armor. He had only the reckless desperation of a man who realized, in the face of death, that he was hopelessly in love with his monster. Valerius slammed his horse into Kaelin's stallion just as the archer fired. The impact sent both horses stumbling. Kalen fell, rolling across the snow. The stone archway crashed down, not on the king, but on the spot where he had been a second before. Debris exploded outward. A heavy stone fragment struck Valerius in the side, knocking him from his saddle. He hit the ground hard, the world spinning into darkness. Pain, white-hot and blinding, flared in his ribs. Through the ringing in his ears, he heard a sound that chilled the blood of every man on the battlefield. It was a roar of pure, unadulterated fury. Kill them all. Kalen was up, and he was a demon. He didn't fight. He slaughtered. He tore through the remaining assassins with a savagery that made even his own soldiers look away. When the last enemy fell, Kalen dropped his sword and sprinted to where Valerius lay in the crimson-stained snow. Valerius. Kalen fell to his knees, his hands hovering over Valerius's broken body, shaking. The great wolf king, the scourge of the north, was trembling. Get a healer. If he dies, I will burn this forest to ash. Valerius blinked, his vision swimming. He looked up at Kalen's face. There were tears tracking through the blood and dirt on the king's cheeks. Why? Valerius whispered, coughing up a speck of blood. You said? I was just a plaything. Kalen let out a choked sound, half sob, half laugh. He scooped Valerius into his arms, not caring about the blood soaking his furs. You foolish, stubborn boy, Kalen rasped, pressing his forehead against Valerius's. I lied. Valerius woke 3 days later in the king's own bed. The room was warm, filled with the scent of medicinal herbs and Kalen's cedar scent. He tried to sit up, but a hand gently pushed him back. Kalen was sitting in a chair by the bedside, looking exhausted. He hadn't shaved, and dark circles bruised the skin under his eyes. Don't move, Kalen said softly. You have 3 broken ribs and a concussion. Valerius stared at him, the memory of the balcony rushing back. Why am I here? Why didn't you let me die? Kalen sighed, a heavy, weary sound. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. Because I cannot survive without my heart, Valerius. And somehow, you became my heart. Liar. Valerius hissed, turning his face away. I heard you. I heard what you said to Lord Veron. A novelty. A warm body to pass the winter. I knew you were listening, Kalen said quietly. Valerius froze. He turned back slowly. What? I knew you were on the balcony, Kalen explained, his eyes intense. And I knew Veron's spies were listening, too. Valerius, look at where you are. The obsidian citadel is a viper's nest. My father was poisoned by his own brother. My mother was pushed from the tower by a jealous mistress. To love something in this court is to paint a target on its back. Kalen reached out, taking Valerius's hand. His grip was desperate. If they thought you meant something to me, they would have killed you weeks ago. I had to make them believe you were nothing. I had to be cruel to keep you safe. I had to make you hate me, because your hatred was the only shield I could give you. Valerius searched Kalen's face for any sign of deception, but he found only raw vulnerability. You pretended to despise me to protect me. I am a king, but I am surrounded by wolves, Kalen said bitterly. I thought if I kept you at arm's length, if I treated you like a toy, Veron and the council would ignore you. I was wrong. They struck anyway. Kalen's eyes darkened. Veron orchestrated the ambush. He thought he could kill me and blame the rebels. He didn't count on you. Kalen brought Valerius's hand to his lips, kissing the knuckles. You saved me. You, who had every reason to let me die, you saved me. What? Valerius felt the tears prick his eyes. Because I am a fool, he whispered. Because I fell in love with the monster. Kalen closed his eyes, exhaling shakily. Then let me show you that I can be a man, too. The day of the announcement, the day the story began, was the day of the winter solstice ceremony. The court had gathered, expecting the king to announce his engagement to a duchess from the east, a political alliance arranged by the council. Lord Veron stood near the front, smug and preening, unaware that Kalen had already extracted a confession from the surviving assassin in the dungeons below. Valerius stood in the shadows of the pillars, dressed not in the rags of a prisoner, but in velvet robes of deep midnight blue, embroidered with silver thread. He was terrified. Kalen's plan was madness. It was treason against tradition. It was suicide. The herald blew the trumpet. Kalen ascended the dais. He looked magnificent and terrifying. He silenced the crowd with a single raised hand. For generations, Kalen began, his voice booming. The Wolf Kings have ruled alone, or with political pawns by their sides. We have valued strength above all else. But I have learned that strength is not just the ability to kill. It is the ability to sacrifice. He scanned the crowd, his gaze landing on Varon. There are traitors among us. Men who would kill their king for power. They believed I was weak. They believed I was distracted by a plaything. The crowd murmured. Varon's smile faltered. They were wrong, Kalen thundered. Bring him forward. The guards stepped aside, revealing Valerius. He walked forward, his legs shaking, but his head held high. He could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes. Walk, he told himself. Walk like the prince you were born to be. He reached the dais. Kalen stepped down, meeting him halfway. The breach of protocol was immense. Lord Varon, Kalen said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. You asked what I intended to do with the boy from Ethelgard. You suggested I discard him. Kalen reached out to the cushion held by the high priest. On it rested the lunar crown, a circlet of white gold and diamonds, traditionally worn by the consort of the north. I will not discard him, Kalen declared. I will crown him. This is an outrage, Varon shouted, stepping forward. He is an enemy. He is a whore. You cannot make him queen. I am the king, Kalen roared, the sound echoing like thunder. And my word is law. He is not an enemy. He is my soulmate. He is the other half of my soul, and anyone who speaks against him speaks against me. Kalen turned to Valerius, his expression softening instantly. He lifted the crown. Valerius of Ethelgard, Kalen whispered, loud enough only for them to hear. I cannot give you back your kingdom, but I can give you mine. Will you rule with me? Will you help me tear the rot from this court and build something new? Valerius looked at the man who had been his captor, his tormentor, and now his savior. He saw the fear in Kalen's eyes, the fear of rejection. Yes, Valerius breathed. Yes, my king. Kalen placed the crown on Valerius's head. It was heavy. It was cold. But Kalen's hands were warm. As the crowd gasped and the guards moved to arrest the sputtering Lord Varon, Kalen knelt. He knelt before Valerius in front of the entire empire. Let them look, Kalen growled, his voice a low rumble. Let them see the only thing in this godforsaken world that I bow to. Valerius reached down, threading his fingers through Kalen's dark hair, pulling him up. Stand, Kalen, he commanded softly, finding his own power for the first time. A king does not kneel. Not even to me. Kalen stood, towering over him, a feral grin spreading across his face. He wrapped an arm around Valerius's waist, pulling him flush against his chest. Then let us reign, Kalen said, and kissed him. It was a kiss of possession, of promise, and of war. It was a kiss that sealed the fate of the northern kingdom. The plaything was gone. The queen had risen. And the Wolf King had finally found his home. And that is how the wolf tamed the north, by letting the rabbit tame him. If you enjoyed seeing Valerius take his rightful place, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who pretended to hate you to save your life? Or is the deception unforgivable? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then, prompt image. Prompt, masterpiece, best quality, high-res, 1.2. Korean manhwa style, semi-realistic, digital art, 2 men, BL, Yaoi, man 1. Tall and muscular alpha king, long messy black hair, scar over eye, wearing black fur and iron armor, feral and possessive expression, kneeling on one knee. Man 2. Slim and beautiful silver-haired prince, wearing deep blue velvet robes with silver embroidery. Shocked, but regal expression, blushing, standing. Background is a grand stone throne room with banners. Gasping crowd in blurred background. Winter lighting, floating dust motes, cinematic angle, dramatic emotional atmosphere.